Today, I'd like to read to you from Amos chapter 6 and speak to you about those who were at ease in Zion. I mean, they were sinfully at ease in Zion. You'll see what I mean when I read to you Amos chapter 6, verses 1 and 2, where we read, "Woe to you who are at ease in Zion and trust in the Mount Samaria, notable persons in the chief nation, to whom the house of Israel comes. Go over to Calmeh and see, and from there go to Hamath the great, then go down to Gath of the Philistines. Are you better than these kingdoms? Or is their territory greater than your territory?" In these verses from Amos chapter 6, the prophet compared Israel to her pagan neighbors. He listed the names of ancient kingdoms that are mostly forgotten to us today, but they were well known in the time of Amos. The prophet warned them that if they continued in the same rejection of God, they would end up in the same place as these forgotten kingdoms. The danger of Israel's rebellion made it wrong for them to relax. Therefore, Amos warned them, "Woe to you who are at ease in Zion." We can relate to this today. In her pride and indulgence, all Israel sought was ease. This indulgent lust for comfort and luxury is a sin, and God promised that He would judge ancient Israel for it. We should remember that the idea of rest isn't all bad. Jesus wants to give us rest. He invited us to receive His rest in Matthew chapter 11. And there is a true rest waiting for the people of God, according to Hebrews chapter 4. And there's an ultimate rest for us in heaven, according to Revelation chapter 4. Yet, there is another kind of rest, a sinful kind of rest, a rest that's connected to indifference, laziness, and indulgence. This is what Amos spoke of. This isn't the confidence of a man who's pardoned, but the ease of a hardened criminal who has learned to despise the law. It's not the assurance of one who stands on the rock, but it's the ease of a senseless drunkard whose house shakes on its sandy foundations, and yet he parties at full speed. It's not the calm of a soul at peace with God, but the ease of a madman who thinks that because he hides his sin from his own eyes, he also thinks that he's concealed it from God. Now, how did this sinful ease of God's people showed itself? Well, Amos explains, Israel's sinful ease was shown in its presumption because they trusted in the might of Mount Samaria. Israel's sinful ease was shown in procrastination because they believed that she was put off for the day of doom. Israel's sinful ease was shown in cruelty to men because she caused the seat of violence to come near. Israel's sinful ease was shown in love of self through all the self-indulgence described in Amos chapter 6, verses 4 through 6. And Israel's sinful ease was shown in carelessness in the willful, drunken ignorance of Amos chapter 6, verse 6. Now, we say it all the time to each other. Take it easy. We should remember that there's a good way to take it easy and a bad way. The good way finds refuge in Jesus Christ and rest in Him that leads to productive labor for the kingdom of God. The bad way to take it easy is rooted in simple self-indulgence. On this point, the great English preacher Charles Spurgeon wrote, "Self-indulgence, oh, this is the god of many. They live not for Christ. What do they do for Him? They live not for His church. What do they care for that? They live for self and for self only. And mark that there are such among the poor as well as among the rich, for all classes have this evil leaven." This ungodly ease and self-indulgence is bad in itself, but it also leads to other evils. King David had an ungodly ease when he stayed behind when it was time for the kings to go out to war, and he slipped into sin with Bathsheba, eventually murdering her husband to cover up his immorality. You'll find all that in 2 Samuel chapter 11. Now, at the end of Amos chapter 6, verse 2, God asked Israel a challenging question. He wanted them to look at the kingdoms at that time, the kingdoms that time would forget. And he asked them, are you better than these kingdoms? God wanted to rebuke the pride of Israel by making them compare themselves to some of their pagan neighbors. Perhaps they weren't so great after all. Perhaps these cities already suffered the judgment of God, and God wanted ancient Israel to know that they would be next because they were no better. You see, ancient Israel could get ready for God and his judgment by enjoying the right kind of rest. Rest in and through Jesus Christ. That's my prayer for you, and I pray it for you today.